Hello, my name is Tim Harte. I'm an independent director at AFDO, the Australian Federation of Disability Organisations, and I act as a voluntary international coordinator at AFDO. I am coming to you recorded from New York at the United Nations headquarters from the Conference of State Parties, the 19th Conference of State Parties for the UN Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities, UN CRPD. The theme of this conference has been focused on where we are 20 years after the implementation of the UN CRPD, how far we've come and how far we need to go in particular. I will now go to one of our first speakers from the conference, Helen Ferris, who is Vice President of Blind Citizens Australia. Helen is well known in the Australian disability community for advocating on behalf of women with disabilities and spoke to this at length and in detail on a round table about violence, abuse and neglect of women and people with disabilities and protections of people with disabilities in law and systems. I'll now go to Helen's video. Thank you.
Chair, distinguished guests, delegates and advocate colleagues, thank you for the opportunity to speak. The Australian Federation of Disability Organisations advocates for policy change within Australia and internationally, and we very much applaud the Convention, the United Nations Convention on the Rights of People with Disabilities. The Convention has achieved many gains since its inception, but some groups continue to be left behind, such as women, girls and gender diverse people on whom this intervention will focus. The Convention Article 6 guarantees women and girls full human rights and non-discrimination, and this article has been enacted by many states parties in legislation and policy. But gender inequity still persists. Intersecting with other inequalities and driven by negative attitudes about disability, which normalise disrespect, discrimination, abuse, control and segregation, change can only occur if these underlying social and economic contexts are challenged. But what would change look like? UN actors and civil society can encourage states parties to publicly commit to gender and disability inclusion and to transparently and regularly report progress towards implementation. Women, girls and gender diverse people with disabilities, civil society, advocacy and UN participation can lead to more relevant and cost-effective policies and more accurate monitoring of their success. Realisation of the Convention's prohibition of gender and disability-based violence and abuse would reduce the higher rates of violence which women, girls and gender diverse people with disabilities endure. Accessible physical and digital infrastructure and enabling environments promoting service access rather than cost reduction would realise full educational, economic, social and political participation for all genders. UN civil society promotion of disaggregated gender and disability-led research and data collection could ensure targeted and measurable outcomes. If UN mechanisms and civil society hold states parties accountable to actively challenge gender and disability-based marginalisation, violence and stereotypes, while at the same time championing women, girls and gender diverse people with disabilities' full inclusion and leadership, they would fully benefit from current and future gains promised by the Convention and be able to celebrate. Happy birthday, UN CRPD. Let's make the next 20 years even better. Thank you.
Hello, I'm Ramis McRae. I'm from Melbourne, Naarm, and I'm here at COSP19. It's been really enjoyable. I've seen so many things. I've learnt about how various countries and communities work and what's happened for the CRPD and the involvement and inclusion of persons with disabilities over the last 20 years. It's been a great opportunity to network with people with expertise. I've been really impressed and I've really enjoyed my opportunity, and thank you so much to AFDO for supporting my attendance here.
Inclusive education was a key recommendation of the Disability Royal Commission. In my general debate speech on behalf of AFDO, I spoke about the importance of inclusive education ranging through from school years all the way to higher education.
Next, I kindly invite the representative from Australian Federation of Disability Organisations.
Distinguished delegates, fellow advocates and representatives of our global disability movement. Australia's data tells a simple truth. In 2018, only 9.1% of people aged 15 to 64 with disability were studying for a non-school qualification, compared with 15% of people without disability. Behind that gap, our futures narrowed too early. I know this personally. I left high school without the formal score normally required for university. My path could have ended there. Instead, my mother's advocacy and a supported pathway through a Diploma of Science opened a door. Education gave me more than credentials. It gave me language to advocate, confidence, relationships, and evidence that I belonged in spaces where I had not been expected. When I acquired disabilities at 19, I encountered government programs meant to support young people with disabilities into careers. Yet, I was pressed towards entry-level work that was inaccessible to me and would have anchored me to a minimum wage future. I do not say this to reject employment. I say it because employment without education, choice, and accessibility is not empowerment. It can become containment. Globally, disability and poverty reinforce each other. Research has warned that persons with disabilities may account for as many as 1 in 5 of the world's poorest, and that lower educational attainment is a key pathway linking disability to adult poverty. That is why Article 24 of the CRPD is not only about schooling, it is about dignity, autonomy, livelihood, and leadership. It connects directly to Article 28 on an adequate standard of living and social protection, and Article 29 on participation in public life. The Sustainable Development Goals promise no poverty, an inclusive, equitable, quality education. For persons with disabilities, those goals are inseparable. I began without a graduating score. I am now completing a PhD in materials chemistry in record time. That is not an exception to celebrate. It is evidence of what access makes possible. Let us build education systems that do not sort persons with disabilities into poverty, but equip us to lead. Thank you.
Hello everyone. My name is Jodie Barney and I'm from Shepparton, Victoria, and I'm here at COSP19, New York, within the UN building. I'm very excited because I was the first deaf Indigenous person from Australia to be here. I've really enjoyed coming and listening to a variety of people from different countries globally, and I've learnt what the impacts are in numerous types of ways over this to do with the CRPD. We've celebrated now the 20-year anniversary of the CRPD, and I think Australia still has a long way to go. We have a lot of progress to make. We need to include Indigenous people in the discussions, but hopefully we will be successful and have the first delegation of people with a diverse range of disabilities and Indigenous backgrounds. So I very much hope and thank AFDO for the support that they have provided me over the past and also hopefully into the future. Thank you.
We'll now go to a question that I asked in a side event about the changes in the National Disability Insurance Scheme. Tim Harte from the Australian Federation of Disability Organisations. The Australian National Disability Insurance Scheme, abbreviated to the NDIS, has a vital role in supporting the rights of people with disabilities to live independently, participate in their communities and access supports they need, consistent with Australia's obligations under the UN CRPD. Supported independent living is a significant budgetary component of the NDIS. The Australian government's recently announced reforms will reduce the number of people receiving disability support by more than 20% by 2030. Many disability advocates have raised serious concerns about the lack of consultation undertaken with people with disabilities before the announcement of these significant reforms. I'm very interested to hear from the panel their views on why it is important that governments involve people with disabilities when making decisions that directly affect their rights, their supports, their living environment and participation in society. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
This year marked a significant step with AFDO's international collaborations. We held an online side event, an official UN side event at the 19th Conference of State Parties. The side event was focused on deinstitutionalisation within a global context, specifically focused on development in the Pacific with our various partners. For the side event, we partnered with CBM Australia. We were co-sponsored by DFAT, the Department of Foreign Affairs and Trade from the Australian Government. We worked with the Australian Disability Development Consortium and Psychiatric Survivors Association Fiji, as well as Transitioning Communities for Inclusion, TCI Global. Thank you to all of our speakers and to everyone who has joined the discussion. Across the session, I've heard 5 key messages. First, deinstitutionalisation remains unfinished 20 years after the UN Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities was adopted, the UN CRPD. Second, it is not only about closing buildings, it is about transforming the laws, services, funding models and attitudes that deny people choice and control. Third, people with psychosocial, intellectual and cognitive disabilities must lead the design, implementation and monitoring of reforms. Fourth, community inclusion requires real support, peer support, personal assistance, accessible mainstream services, social protection and safeguards against coercion. Fifth, governments and development partners have a responsibility to fund inclusion, not segregation. The next phase of CRPD, Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disability, implementation must be measured not only by commitments made in international forums, but by whether people can live safely, freely, and with dignity in the community, with the support they choose. Thank you again to AFDO, ADDC, PSA Fiji, TCI Global, CBM Australia, DFAT, the organisers, our sign language interpreters and audience members. We hope this discussion contributes to stronger action on deinstitutionalisation and community-based inclusion across the region and globally. Hello, my name is Tim Harte. I'm from the Australian Federation of Disability Organisations, and this is Heidi Kershaw from the Global Autism Coalition. We're at the United Nations headquarters, and we've just finished the week attending the 19th Conference of State Parties for the UN Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities. The key theme for this conference has been where we are 20 years after the implementation of the UNCRPD, the UN Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities. The key takeaway for me for this conference has been all of the great side events and the great focus on lived experience in particular, lived experience in influencing policy, decision making and practice. Heidi, what have your key takeaways from the conference been?
I really appreciated how representative this conference has been of not only NGOs but on state parties. Every corner of the earth was somehow here discussing this. And one of the things that they all aligned on was the importance of the uniquely abled voice in all the policy discussions and how to move things forward.
Awesome.